When you're watching Avengers Endgame, let me just say this movie, the hype surrounding this movie, the tension, everybody was tuned in, everybody was locked in. After Avengers Infinity War, people were begging for this movie. And we got Ant-Man and the Wasp and Captain Marvel in between it, you know what I mean, giving us a little bit of backstory or kind of understanding about like the circumstances behind Avengers Endgame or certain things that are going to happen in Avengers Endgame, I guess. Captain Marvel was more so establishing her character, how strong she was, and her connection to Nick Fury, where Ant-Man and the Wasp introduced us to the quantum realm and their ability to kind of access it or navigate it. So it's kind of a big deal, that movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp. So the fact that they came out with it after Avengers Infinity War is a really good thing, I think. I think that because of that movie, we were able to get the benefits of Avengers Endgame. So anyways, I have to say, this movie, it was such a huge buildup. It was everything to everyone in 2019. It was a big part of what the story that Marvel and the MCU was making. You know, it was kind of their saga or what they were chasing after or going towards, you know what I mean? It felt like there had to be a huge relief or like a huge win, you know, for our characters, for what we've endured these past 11 years watching these movies, what I endured watching these past 11 movies. It was really cool and kind of important that they nailed the landing on this one. But I remember going to the theaters that day, just being like so ready. And I kind of, not to be like, I spoiled myself, but I spoiled myself. But it's kind of like, obviously you don't know what the whole movie's going to be, but I might have dived in a little too deep on the theories or like what's going to happen in Avengers Endgame, you know what I mean? Those kinds of things. But my mind was constantly on it and I was thinking about it, and the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I kind of got like dove deeper into it, you know what I mean? And that kind of spoiled the movie for me a little bit. Not to the point where I don't like the movie, to the point where I was like, I felt like I cheated myself a little bit of like a real movie theater experience, like figuring out they were time traveling, like seeing those set photos and having everybody be like, yeah, they're definitely going back in time. They're going to go do this and do that. And I was kind of like, I kind of would have liked to not be spoiled about that or have no idea they were going to go back in time or whatnot. You know what I mean? And then, there were speculations that Thor was going to get fat. And then when I did see Thor get fat, I was like, oh my gosh, it's real, it's true. Or I was like laughing a little bit at it. But at the same time, I was like, yeah, but that was expected. Like, I already knew that. And it kind of like, it didn't spoil it. It was still funny. I still had a good time watching it. I was like, oh, that's cool. That, like, people predicted it and it happened. But at the same time, I was like, I would have liked to have avoided any of those speculations or kind of rumors or whatnot. You know what I mean? And so from that point on, I knew for myself that, like, you gotta... I mean, I still watch trailers and I still kind of, like, have my own thoughts about, like, where the Marvel movies are going, but for now I'm kind of like, yo, I'm just gonna back off here for a little bit. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna put my foot on the gas as heavy as I was back then. But yeah, it was just that moment, that movie, it meant so much, and it was such a important turn in the Marvel movies. But anyways, moving on to the actual movie itself. I mean, I like how they started off with us looking at Clint Barton, kind of looking at his family life or how the snap affected him. And so that way we get a little bit of context as to like how he changes or transforms when we see him later in the movie. And there are going to be some things about that I like and things about it that I don't like, but we'll get over that. But I like the part where they're like having a picnic and then all of a sudden Clint turns over his shoulder and his daughter's gone, his son and his wife are gone, and I was just like, oh my gosh. On the one hand, that's so scary because he's on house arrest. He doesn't have anybody to like really talk to. And on the other hand, it's like, just being there that day, not being a part of whatever was going on, facing Thanos or fighting with the rest of the Avengers. It was just, on the one hand, it's kind of like nice to be able to spend time with your family, you know what I mean? But on the other hand, he could have helped them out, I guess, or at least known what was going to happen or what could have happened. Instead, he was kind of left all alone, just with nobody, with nothing. And that was scary. And then we cut over to Iron Man and Nebula. They're stuck on the Guardian ship, and they're stuck in space, but I was kind of like, how are they stuck in space? But apparently the ship took damage while they were on Titan fighting Thanos, and I kind of understand that. When you get a moon thrown at you, you know what I mean, and earthquakes happen, I guess they could shake up that ship or whatnot and destroy some stuff, so whatever, I'm with it. And then him getting saved by Captain Marvel, I thought that was good. It was kind of like, you know, him giving the little like pre-recorded message of his death, but then he doesn't die, he comes back. I thought all of that was really good. I thought it brought so much tension up into the air and then brought it back down when he landed, and Pepper was there and he reunited with some of the guys, I guess. I liked Nebula and Rocket holding hands when they came back to Earth, and they were able to bond over their shared loss of Gamora and the other Guardians. I thought that was cool. I thought, you know, I kind of wanted like Tony to like push Steve Rogers away, like when he comes up to him and he kind of like, no, I don't want to talk to you. Like, I kind of thought that would be funny, but they do have a good exchange later on. Pepper's alive and they get to reunite, and it's a beautiful thing. And then we move on to figuring out where Thanos is, you know, where it happened to him, where did he go? I really like the exchange between Tony and Steve, where Tony basically tells them, I told you so. We needed a safe plan, a way to bring back, you know what I mean, to protect the world from this alien invasion. I knew it was going to happen. I talked about this. I pointed it out to everybody, and you said we would fail together, and we didn't. I failed alone on another space, on another planet, and you were over here, and you failed too, and we weren't together. It wasn't joined unification. And I think that was such a clever move by the Russo brothers. What they did with Captain America Civil War is splitting up the Avengers after Avengers Age of Ultron, you know what I mean, where they said they would lose together, and then splitting them apart, having them drawn apart, now working as a team. Still being able to fight, still being able to take the fight head on, but they weren't unified together, much like they have been in the past. And so it just made the whole situation a lot more, it made that conversation tense. And you only get a good scene like that, you only get a good scene between Tony and Steve, so much tension, so much between the two of them that's being hidden underneath, you know what I mean? All underneath what they've been through. And now we're finally seeing it explode. We're finally seeing it all emotionally come out. It speaks to the benefits of having a long-term storytelling like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What 3 movies ago built up to into this moment, into this conversation, into this scene. And so it matters. It makes all that context, all of those films so important and worth it to earn that moment. And I felt like it was a really good scene. I also thought that his ability to kind of, on the one hand, talk to somebody or talk to Steve at all and kind of confront him, and then at the same time kind of like respect or give respect or congratulations to like Captain Marvel being like, we need you, you're good, you're new blood. I got nothing for these old timers like Steve Rogers, you know what I mean? I feel like that was a really good moment, solid scene. I also like how Captain Marvel was like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go out there and kill Thanos. And then everybody starts piling in. I like how Rocket basically tells them that this is where he is and whatnot. And they all kind of strategize or put together like, we'll use the stones to bring everybody back. And I like Steve's cosign to that being like, yeah, just like that. We'll do it just like that, easily. Simple. And we see Captain Marvel kind of like boosting her confidence, or like her ego flares a little bit. She's like, before you didn't have me. And then I like how she checked Rhodey. Rhodey was like, hey, we're all superheroes, and where have you been all this time? And she has to clarify that like, there are a lot of other planets out there that don't have the Avengers, so they have me. And so I kind of liked that, you know. I liked how she checked him, like kind of clearing that like, yo, none of you guys were around over there. Why weren't you guys here or over there, right? Like, you guys have been here this whole time. So anyways, then we see Thor's test by bringing Stormbreaker over to her head. And on the one hand, yes, that's a cool trick. But on the other hand, it's like, I don't think she really knew that Thor could do that. Like, it's one thing for Loki to know that Mjolnir's not going to stop if it, like, comes to his face until it comes to Thor's hand. It's another thing when she doesn't know Thor or doesn't know that he can basically like do that kind of thing. So I don't know. I just don't see it as intimidating, but it is cool nonetheless. So anyways, they go after Thanos on his farm. And yeah, I just like how everybody that's left groups up and tries to go after him. And I like the idea of his retirement plan and how he, you know, has his farm and whatnot. Then they attack him and they do a coordinated attack just on him. And a little part of me kind of wanted, well, a lot of part of me kind of wanted Thanos to fight back with the Infinity Gauntlet. I wanted him to use the Infinity Stones and fight them back just a little bit with the stones. I kind of wish that we got a little bit more action from that. Kind of got a little bit more of him attacking them, I guess. But they wouldn't know. Well, the way that it would work in my head is that Nebula would tell them what planet he's on, and then they would fight him, and then in that moment he would use the Infinity Stones to destroy the Infinity Stones or whatever, and that would be the end of it. You know? They would have like a little fight, whatever, and then he would get rid of the Infinity Stones right in front of them. And then things play out as they usually do. But anyways, this time they attack him, they fight him, and everybody's ready. Everybody's ready for war. Everybody's ready to figure out, like, how do we stop him? How do we get everybody back? How do we just got to take the stones from him, the gauntlet and whatnot. And the realization that the stones are gone, Thanos' explanation that he destroyed them, and then Thor killing Thanos, ending it. It all feels a little too late, you know what I mean? And I can honestly feel Thor's disappointment, you know what I mean? I can feel his victory isn't a victory, it's a loss, you know what I mean? It's only a falling action. The big moment already happened. He missed it. He didn't go for the head last time, and now he did, and it's over. There's no peace. There's no victory. There's no avenging. It's just him killing an alien, and that's it. It's distasteful. It's bitter. It's tainted. It's a tainted victory because they can't bring everybody back. So then, 5 years later, 5-year time skip, and I think it was brilliant of the Russo brothers, of the direction that they took of the writers, of everybody, to give them 5 years of this nightmare. 5 years of your friends and family being gone. 5 years of the world being empty. 5 years of half of everyone gone. It's sad. And I think the film reflects that quite well. But on the other hand, I kind of wish there's a huge part of me that wants a lot more, I don't know, exposition about the world's state of affairs. You know what I mean? Who's the new president? Did the old president blip away? You know what I mean? Get snapped away? Is how are businesses working? How is the economy? How is this? How are wars? You know what I mean? Who's losing this? Who's losing that? Where's the outrage of the governments against the Avengers and this and that? It just kind of feels like everything is just. They make it sad, and it is sad, but I kind of wanted a little bit more of a deep dive into it, but maybe that's for like a whole separate thing. Maybe it's, and I'm glad that they focused more on the emotional aspect of it as opposed to the logical or like the, kind of like the logical happenings of what would happen if it really did happen. You know what I mean? So I don't know. But anyways, everybody's gone. And we see Steve Rogers doing some sort of group counseling, some sort of group therapy, kind of like Sam Wilson was doing, where he was like just talking to people, getting them together, I guess. And I think that's when you can't punch or fight the bad guys, I guess it's better to like comfort and heal the ones that are wounded, you know what I mean? Emotionally and psychologically, I guess. And it's funny, there's a moment where the director, one of the directors, is actually in the scene talking to Steve Rogers, and he's like in other movies, and he's like died, he's been like a doctor and stuff like that, so I thought it was funny that like he's back again, and he's just a guy talking about his date, you know what I mean? And there was a funny moment, I don't know why. I was just thinking that, like, he was talking about how he went on a date with a guy, and I immediately, the first thing in my head was like, well, Steve Rogers isn't going to like this because it's gay. But, you know what I mean? Like, just poking at the fun that he was in the 1940s, and it's like, he doesn't accept that, you know what I mean? But, that's not Steve Rogers. He's accepting of all, you know what I mean, sexualities and stuff like that, so I just thought that was like the funny thing that popped into my head is like, oh, that's gay. Cap's not going to like that. You know what I mean? I thought it'd be so funny if he like said something about like, whoa, you're gay. You know what I mean? Just like being like, whoa, that's wild. You know what I mean? But anyways, you know what I mean? That was just whatever. Long story short, he listens and he talks to them, and then he somehow brings Peggy into the conversation. He's like, I met the love of my life in 45, and then I died. But then I was brought back, and she was alive, but then she died again, and it's, it is what it is. Well, more so he died. She died for the first time. But whatever. Anyways, we cut over to Natasha, we cut over to Black Widow, as she's kind of leading the Avengers now, or working and cooperating with Captain Marvel, with Nebula and Rocket Raccoon, and Wakanda with Okoye and everybody else. And she's kind of like, has this support team or system where she's like helping out the world or figuring out like, what can the Avengers do? What can she do to help the world? You know what I mean? Whether it's a threat or a bad guy or whatever. And this is how they get rid of Captain Marvel. She's like, listen, I got to go to all these other planets and help them out. So you guys won't see me for a while. And I thought, yeah, okay. So makes sense. I like Rhodey and Black Widow's conversation about what Clint Barton is doing and how he's destroying things and killing people and whatnot. I like how she's eating a peanut butter sandwich. All of it together. I really like those moments. Then Steve shows up and they have the conversation, and basically, even after all these 5 years, they still can't let it go. And it's just a great example of like the difference between, the saying that like time heals all wounds, and that's just not true. It's not in this case, at least. Time does not heal all wounds. Acceptance heals wounds. When you finally realize that after all this time, whatever happened to you or whatever bad things people did to you, right? Like, if you could finally find some way to cope with it or accept that, you know what, they happened, those bad things did happen to me, but they don't represent my circumstances. That's when you kind of accept it, and that's when time really really makes you accept it or realize it. But for them, after 5 years of this, there's no acceptance of this. They can't move on. And that stubbornness, their inability to let go, immediately after he says, some people move on, but not us. And immediately after that, it's Ant-Man who shows up. Ant-Man who gives them their new life, who shows up and gives them kind of a new way to fix everything. Now, I kind of did skip over some of the Scott Lang stuff, him coming out from that rat. Yo, shout out that rat. He saved the world. But it's kind of not much to talk about. He comes out of the van. The world has changed. He saw his daughter Cassie all grown up, which I thought was crazy. That is such a huge moment. And I thought that the actress that played his daughter did a wonderful job kind of, I mean, just in that little scene, you know what I mean? She captured the moment of like, oh my gosh, Dad? Like all of the emotions rushing through her these past 5 years being like, not, I don't know what happened to her mom or the stepfather or whatever, but like when they finally see each other face to face and she's like, she has tears in her eyes and she's looking at her dad and she's like, I can't believe he's in front of me. I thought he was gone like everybody else. You know what I mean? But, and Paul Rudd delivers great. He's just like, Cassie? And he gives her this look of like, oh my gosh. And then he lightens it up the only way that Paul Rudd can. And he's like, you're so big. I thought that was a great moment. It's so sad, but it's also like, it's beautiful that they're back together now, I guess. Even though he missed so much time with his daughter. But anyways, we cut back to, you know what I mean, him showing up at the Avengers facility, and he's talking to Steve and Natasha about the quantum realm and about how those 5 years there was 5 years for everybody else, but for him, they were like 5 hours. Because the quantum realm is different than our world. So an hour spent in there is like a year in their time. So he didn't age more than 5 hours. So everything in the world is changed. And he didn't get stuck down there. That's why he didn't starve to death and all this other stuff. And so he's talking to them about how quantum physics and the quantum realm offer time pockets or time vortex or abilities to like, because of the change in time fluctuations, there could be ability for them to go into the quantum realm in a specific point of time and then come out at a specific point of time, and thus a time machine is born. And he's kind of like, it's not a time machine. And he's like, yeah, I'm talking about a time machine. And they start thinking about it and they start wondering and figuring ideas out, and they go like, there might be a way to undo everything. Who do we talk to about this? And so their first reaction is, let's go talk to Tony Stark. And we see his life change. We see him living on a farm, right? Like Clint Barton. We see him have a daughter with his now, I guess, wife. It'd be crazy if they weren't married, but like, yeah, they got married. Yeah, let's just say they got married. Whatever, small ceremony. And now they have a daughter, Morgan, and they show up on his front doorstep and they offer him the opportunity to save everybody, and he's just kind of like, no. And I thought that was such a... On the one hand, I'm kind of like upset at him, and on the other hand, I'm kind of like, right, like doing something like this is really... I'm not thinking about it the way that, I guess, Ant-Man or Paul Rudd is thinking about it, or Scott Lang. He's thinking about it as like, we go get the Infinity Stones, we come back, we snap our fingers, everybody comes back. But he's kind of, maybe Tony's thinking about it as like, we're going to go back to fighting Thanos, like back to 2018. We're going to go back and we're going to face him, we're going to fight him and stuff like that. And I just like the whole discourse. I like the whole conversation about like the science behind it, how it's not possible. And then the idea that Paul Rudd was using Back to the Future as like their understandings of time and whatnot. I liked how Tony shut down Scott and told him, like, I won't even try it because I have my daughter to think about. I have everything that I've wanted here. And I'm not going to risk my life or just to go back and do this. You know what I mean? I have too much to lose. And I like how he goes like, you know, this is my second chance. My daughter's my second chance. My second chance at life, at having a life, of being a husband and a father and a good man and stuff like that. As opposed to staying as Iron Man, you know, going back to being Iron Man. And I also like how Steve explains is that like the Infinity Stones are gone. We have to go back in time to get them. And this is our new spot. And I like how Black Widow also says that. We have to take a stand and go for it. And then they just get denied. And so Steve thinks of the next person that they can talk to. Another smart brainiac. And we cut to Bruce Banner, now Smart Hulk, or whatever you want to call him. And there are a couple of things. I like it. I like that he's Smart Hulk. I don't like that they don't show how he becomes Smart Hulk. I feel like they missed like maybe a good 10 minutes of exposition of just like showing him back in 2018 how he was so confused and muddled, and how he was starting to look in himself and realize that like the fact that Hulk isn't coming out, he can just be Bruce Banner again, right? Like, but then he starts realizing that being the Hulk was maybe a good thing. Maybe it was supposed to be a part of him. You know what I mean? And now he comes at peace with himself, you know? Something like that, along those lines. But instead, I guess they use Smart Hulk more as like for comedy, I guess, comedic purposes. But anyways, I like that they introduced him, and I like the little funny bits that they do with the selfie and whatnot. And I like how he's on board, or is like, you know what, let's try it. And he comes on board to help them out and stuff. So then, I think they start doing trials or tests and whatnot. They start like figuring out, okay, if we can really go try time traveling, let's give it a shot. You know what I mean? They do some trials and whatnot. And then Tony is also doing some trials, figuring out, all right, let's take a look. Let's see if we can actually do this. And he figures out a way. He figures out a way to do time travel. And he's talking to his daughter, and they have a really cute moment. She says she loves him 3,000, which was adorable. And then in a great moment, Tony tells Pepper, hey, I kind of learned I figured out time travel. And Pepper's kind of like, wow, that's crazy. And Tony says, you know, maybe I don't go through with this. Maybe I put this idea in a box and just hide and stay here with you and our daughter, and, you know, we can kind of be us, be a family, you know? No avenging, no Iron Man, no fighting to defend or bring everybody back, just us. And Pepper has to ask him, Pepper tells him that, like, she never could get him to do anything, not to do anything. You know what I mean? She couldn't convince him. But even if he did put it away in a box, would he be able to rest? And I like that. Because you know how you go to sleep, but you still don't feel rested? That would have been him forever. If he had put it away, he would have he would have closed his eyes, but he'll never sleep. You know? Stayed awake at night thinking about all of the different things that could have happened. All of the different things that could happen to him. You know? Thinking about Doctor Strange, how there was no other way for them to achieve or to win. Thinking about Peter, how he died in his arms, and he feels so guilty about putting him up there, enabling him, giving him the Iron Spider suit, giving him access to everything, to himself and stuff, you know? And inevitably, he realizes to himself that I have the power to do good. I'm going to try and do good. And I like that. I love that about this movie, what he chooses to do. And so we see the Avengers trying to figure out how to do time travel. And we see Scott Lang become a baby, and then an old man, and then a kid, and then back to Scott Lang and whatnot. And it was funny moments. And then Bruce is like, time travel. I like that. Those funny moments like that. But then anyways, we're going to zip through here a little bit. I think Tony comes by and basically tells them or shows them that, hey, look, I figured it out. Instead of pushing time through Scott, you can push Scott through time, you know? But I definitely have some ground rules here. Bring back everybody, yes. Keep my daughter and my family, I have to. So we're going to bring everybody back under those conditions that we changed nothing over these past 5 years. And that is crazy. But on the other hand, it's personal, so you have to kind of understand it. And when you're the man who invented time travel, you kind of have to go along, I guess. And so now that they have, basically, they have or they know a way to bring everybody back, Natasha goes after Clint and finds him in Japan killing Yakuza members and gang members and whatnot. I'm sure this happens earlier in the film, but I'm just remembering it now. Or like, I'm remembering the confrontation, you know what I mean? But anyways, we see that he's just, I like how he's changed. What his thinking is now is that like everybody else died because of Thanos, and you're alive. You're a bad guy. You're a gang member. You're killing people. You're organized crime or stuff like that. And I like how he's like, everybody else got Thanos, and you guys get me. I thought that was a good line. And then he kills the guy, and then Nat shows up and brings him on board. And now it's go time. Now everybody's putting together the machine, the time travel machine. They call up Rocket Raccoon, they get Nebula, they get Thor, they get everybody on board. And then we cut over to Thor. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I forgot about that. Hulk and Rocket have to go over and talk to Thor, get him on board, figure out how to bring everybody back. There's a funny moment between Valkyrie and everybody else on New Asgard, near wherever, where she's like, I kind of liked you better as the other ways. You know what I mean? As the Angry Hulk and Bruce Banner. And that's kind of like poking at people's like maybe unlike of Smart Hulk or whatever, but then we see Hulk and Rocket meet up with Thor, and he's all fat now, and he's hugging everybody, and he's just kind of in this depressed state, drinking beer and eating, playing video games and whatnot. And I mean, not that drinking beer and eating and playing video games is a sign of depression, but for him, he's just like enclosed himself in his room. He's not helping out with New Asgard or anything. Like, he's the quote-unquote king, but he's just not working. He's not helping everybody. And we can see that Thanos' effect on him is still lingering. It's still hurting him. And so Hulk basically tells him that there's a chance that they could bring it all back. And so they get Thor on board, and now everybody's back together. The team's back, baby. They start building the time machine and whatnot. They start working together and figuring out, all right, now we have to figure out the everything else. You know what I mean? So the how they go back in time works, but now we need to figure out the when, where, and stuff like that. They also send Clint back in time to figure out if it works and whatnot. They get one trial to see how it works, or if it works at all. He comes back and he tells them it works, and so they got to put together a plan. They got to put together the time heist. And so they figure out where the time stone, the space stone, the soul stone, and everything, all the stones are, basically. And yeah, it's just a cool little reminiscing of all the MCU storylines in the movies. You know, seeing Thor talk about the ether and Jane Foster and the reality stone, talking about the power stone on Morag, talking about the space stone, the mind stone, the soul stone, all of that stuff all coming together. And them just learning about each other. I think that's a really interesting part of the movie, or a good part of the movie where they collaborate with each other. You know what I mean? It's days or weeks or however long it took to make things happen, you know? And so eventually they put it all together. All right, 6 stones, three timelines or whatever, 3 places, one way, one solid way. And so Steve Rogers does an incredible speech to uplift everybody's spirits. And I like how Rocket's like, he's really good at that. And Scott's like, right? I know, huh? Everybody's all together now. And then everybody goes to their respective places. Everybody does what they're supposed to do. We got the first team going to 2012 with the first Avengers to get the Space Stone, the Mind Stone, and the Time Stone. We got Thor and Rocket going over to 2013 to get the Reality Stone from Jane Foster, played by Natalie Portman, who makes a reappearance in this movie, but just to sleep, which I thought was funny. They also bring back Loki in 2013 and 2012. And then 2014 for the Power Stone and Morag with Peter Quill, and then Vormir for everybody else. So, anyways, we get to see each respective team doing what they're supposed to do to get the stone. And so we see... let's start with the Avengers. Let's start with 2012, okay? So Hulk is supposed to go for the Time Stone from, they think, Doctor Strange, but it's going to be the ancient one instead, which I thought it was great that they brought Tilda Swinton back. I thought that was really cool. And then they do the Space Stone, which is the Tesseract, and they have Scott, Tony, and Captain America all going for it. And there's some great moments in there. I'm not going to break down everything just because it would fill up this whole thing, but I like their revisiting of the end of the Avengers, and they kind of show us like, all right, this is what happens after and what kind of goes down and whatnot. We see Tony getting into position. We see Scott Lang shrinking down and going for the Tesseract and stuff. And we see Cap going for the scepter, the Mind Stone. And so, okay, the elevator scene with Captain America getting the scepter, hands down, one of the best scenes that they ever did, because it's just so interesting to see that, like, he changes his approach to doing things, to achieving his goals, that isn't punching his way out, you know what I mean? Like in 2014 for the Winter Soldier, that he needed to fight his way out. But this time, now knowing everything, now knowing about Hydra and whatnot, being able to say Hell Hydra into their ear and get the scepter without a fight, easy, calm, simple. Like that's an achievement. That's growth over the course of these movies. And then seeing Scott pull out or making like Tony Stark like have a heart attack with his arc reactor was really funny. He was like, "I'm going inside you." That was funny. And then Thor like tapping his arc reactor with Mjolnir and bringing him back to life. He's like, "Yes!" I had no idea if that would work. And then Tony getting hit by Hulk and losing the Tesseract and Loki picking it up and disappearing through the Space Stone. That was so interesting. And they brought back Robert Redford to like have discourse or an argument with. I thought that was really good. And then, man, that's just an incredible scene, all of it. All of the different stuff like that. And then we see Bruce and the Ancient One kind of go back and forth about like what giving him the Infinity Stone means for their timeline. But being able to bring it back is important. And then him explaining that Doctor Strange gave it up willingly and that maybe she's making a mistake by not giving it to Bruce. And so she gives him the stone. And then finally, Captain America versus Captain America. Another great example of like just how young or how different he was, how he didn't know. And his old version of himself is more so like, let me punch first and ask questions later. And then he has to kind of fight himself, realize the differences between them is like how he's grown now is what gives him the advantage to eventually win and get the Mind Stone and whatnot. You know what I mean? And then the funny line, that is America's ass is really good. That's a great moment. And so all of it together is fantastic. I think that whole sequence of the Avengers is great. And then obviously Cap and Tony fail, or they realize they fail and they need to figure out like where else can we go to get the Tesseract? If we don't, we're not leaving. And so he basically gives Scott the Mind Stone to go back with, and Tony and Steve are going on a trip to New Jersey to see if they can get the Tesseract and get some Pym particles so they can come back all together. And so they teleport away. Scott goes away with the Mind Stone, and Hulk goes away with the Time Stone, and that's the end of that. And then we cut over to the Reality Stone with Thor and Rocket, and Thor gets some beautiful moments with his mom. A good example of like, you just need your mom. Being able to embrace her and spend time with her and to hear her. And then Rocket stabs Natalie Portman and gets the Reality Stone out of her. You know, stuff like that. Very, very funny. I wish they could have shown that a little bit more, but you know, it is what it is. I also really like Thor also being worthy. It's just like, just because you fail, just because you get depressed, or just because you feel like you're not where you're supposed to be, or you don't do the things that you're supposed to do, or you don't follow the expectations people have of you, doesn't mean you're still not worthy. You're still not great or capable of great things. So having Mjolnir come back to him and taking him with him was very special as well. So all of it, I felt like that moment mattered so much and gave Thor a huge boost of confidence. And then finally, we get the Power Stone and the Soul Stone. So Nebula and Don Cheadle, or Rhodey, they go to get the Power Stone, and they need Peter Quill to get his pen or whatever to unlock the door and steal it. So Rhodey knocks him out as they're watching him sing "Come and Get Your Love" from like the title sequence of the first Guardians movie. I thought that was so funny that they decided to do that again. Knocks him out. They get the Power Stone and they link up. But Nebula, her brain starts splitting. She starts having a huge brain freeze because in 2014, she kind of has she's in the same Wi-Fi network, okay, as her past self. So because of that, they both kind of get sharing mind results, or they're both under the same Wi-Fi, so they can kind of see each other's memories or what they're doing currently. And so we kind of see Nebula in 2014, what she was doing before the events of the Guardians of the Galaxy. She was fighting, and her and Gamora were in training or whatever, and Gamora was winning, and Nebula was losing, I guess. So we got Gamora back, even though it's her past self. And so we basically see that Thanos learns about there being another Nebula, and how she's from the future and stuff like that, and how Nebula betrays Thanos and whatnot and stuff like that. So we kind of learn all of this stuff. Well, he learns. He basically learns what we learn or whatever. And then we cut over to Clint and Natasha going for the Soul Stone. And now this is the part where I have to say, like, I feel like the way things happen, it could have gone either way. It could have been Natasha or it could have been Clint. And in my opinion, I feel like my heart is kind of like, okay, I've accepted that Black Widow or Natasha is gone. Like, I'm fine with that, okay? But when I think about what the other side could have been, Clint killing himself or sacrificing himself to bring back his family, how sad and tragic but heroic at the same time. Kind of a redeeming himself after spending 5 years killing people. You know what I mean? And then his daughter would take his place as the next Hawkeye. That would have been amazing. But, they chose what they wanted to choose, and I think it's disappointing. It's sad, especially with, where the Marvel movies go, or, Black Widow gets her own movie and it feels like, darn, we don't get no more Natasha, It's disappointing, but at the same time, Clint wouldn't be with his family either. So, it feels, it's sad, but it's at the same time, it's a sacrifice for him so that he can get his family back. He can have his family, He can be a father. He can be a husband. And so that's why her sacrifice isn't just for the whole world to get back their loved ones. It's personal for him because he lost her to get them back, But anyways, yeah, I think maybe it should have been Hawkeye. It could have gone either way, but if it was Hawkeye, there would be so much weight to it. His daughter would be the new Hawkeye because they were training at the beginning or whatnot, right? Maybe his sons would become part of Sword or S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever they're called now or whatever. And stuff like that. I think having his family kind of follow in his footsteps would be interesting, but whatever. So now with all of the Infinity Stones, they return back to their timeline, and everybody's like happy, but they eventually learned that Natasha sacrificed herself for the Soul Stone. And now they're all upset. They're down in the dumps. And we see Smart Hulk get a little angry, and I really wanted a piece of Hulk to come out. Like, there's still not, even though he's taken over the body, Hulk is still in there. So he should have freaked out a little bit, just a little bit of a roar, just a little bit of like, "Arr, arr," you know what I mean? Just to prove that he's still in there, he's still angry. If he loses control a little too much, I guess. But they don't, which is disappointing to me, but at the same time, it's like, it doesn't ruin the film for me. It's just, character-wise, I kind of wanted him to like, break out a little bit, bring Hulk back a little bit, you know what I mean? Not completely, so that he can still do what he needs to do, but you know what I mean. So anyways, I also like how Steve said, man, it's sad that Steve didn't get to be there for that moment, and she just sacrificed herself, but I like how they were like, did we know she had family? And he said, yeah, us. Great line. And so now we have to figure out if they can make it worth it or not, And I kind of like the discourse between Hawkeye and Thor about like, we can just bring her back with everybody else, But I kind of like the idea that there's no going back after you do that. You know what I mean? Her soul is in the Soul Stone per se, and there's no going back. So they have to make it worth it. So then Tony makes the Iron Man gauntlet, you know what I mean, to hold the Infinity Stones, which I think is cool, using nanotech. And now they have to decide who's going to snap their fingers. And so Hulk says it has to be me because the radiation it gives off is mostly gamma. So it's kind of like I'm made for this. And that just goes to show that, like, they did this for a good purpose, making him Smart Hulk. He was smart enough to make the right wish. If it was just regular Hulk, he wouldn't be smart enough to make the wish to bring everybody back. But Bruce Banner could. And the body to withstand the radiation, to withstand the snap, being as strong as Thanos and live. It all came together perfectly. The smart mind to make the right wish, and the strong body to snap his fingers and take on the power of the Infinity Stones. It all makes sense, And so it made perfect sense. And we see everybody gear up and get ready to see what happens when the snap happens, and Bruce snaps his fingers, and then birds. You see the sun shine and the birds tweeting, and you see Scott Lang looking outside at like how everything is back to normal again. And you see Clint gets a call from his wife. And then we also see that while Nebula was having her brain fart, while she was having a little bit of a brain freeze, Thanos found her. They took her aboard the ship. They accessed her memories and learned that they kill Thanos, and he fulfills his destiny and brings back and snaps his fingers with the Infinity Stones, but people are trying to get them back, and his mentality shifts there. He learns about the Pym particles. He learns about the time travel aspect, and he sends past Nebula into the future with everybody else, and she brings back Thanos and everybody to their timeline to 2023, and that's how he ends up there. And after snapping their fingers, Thanos comes back through the time machine, destroys the time machine as well because he brings back his whole ship. And now we have 2014 Nebula in the present, pretending to be 2023 Nebula and stuff like that. So it's a little confusing, but nothing too crazy. But anyways, my point being is that past Nebula is in the present, and present Nebula is stuck on Thanos' ship as a prisoner with Gamora. And so now, with Thanos back, he blows up the Avengers facility. Ant-Man gets thrown back, but he shrinks just in time to survive. We see the Avengers facility shrink or fall onto Hulk and Rhodey and Rocket as they're trapped underneath the rubble, and they're flooding, they're drowning or whatever. And Paul Rudd or Ant-Man decides, you know what, I'm going to go after them. So he shrinks down and he starts going for them to try to help them, to try to save them. And then we see Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America all come together, and they go after Thanos. We see past Nebula go for the Infinity Stones, and we see Hawkeye get the Infinity Gauntlet with all the Infinity Stones and escapes all of the aliens, attacking them or being there and whatnot. And so then we see Thor, Iron Man, and Cap all grouped together, and Thor says, "You guys ready?" He gets Mjolnir and Stormbreaker together, and now he's ready to kill Thanos properly this time. And then Thanos gives his little speech, his little monologue or whatever, and about how he's going to destroy the full universe and create a new universe using the Infinity Stones. And they get it on, baby. The big three versus Thanos. And they all start fighting each other. Oh my gosh, it's just great. And then we see Nebula and Gamora team up, future Nebula and the past 2014 Gamora grouped together, and they take on 2014 Nebula to stop her from getting the stones and serving Thanos. But this is a good example of there's a difference between knowing what happens to your life and to your future and actually living through it and experiencing it. Because 2014 Nebula saw her memories. She saw 2023's Nebula's memories. She knows what they become. She knows their experiences. She knows that her and Gamora become sisters. They become friendly again. What they emotionally challenge each other. How she grows as a person. But she still can't let go of Thanos. Her abuse and his abuse and torture of her still lingers in her, and she can't let it go. At least not then. But 2023 Nebula can. She can let it go. She can let it all go. You know, she can live being a good person now, not serving Thanos. Maybe, trying to overthrow and kill him, So, inevitably, 2023 Nebula kills 2014 Nebula in a very symbolic way of killing that past version of herself that was just trying to please and serve Thanos because she wanted his love. She wanted to be treated with respect and with care and with love like Gamora got, but could never get because she kept losing. And now she could let all that go. And so killing her past self makes sense. And so Clint still has the Infinity Gauntlet, and they got to get away from Thanos. But now we got Iron Man, we got Thor, we got Cap all working together to face him. And there's just so many great callbacks from Thor charging up Iron Man's suit, from just Thor going up against Thanos, and Iron Man getting knocked out and everything. It all just works so well. It blends together. They're working as a team, and it's still not enough. So Thanos divides and conquers. He grabs Iron Man, and Mjolnir hits Iron Man, and he goes down, knocked out. Then Thor tries to take on Thanos. He goes specifically straight for the head every single time with each attack, but doesn't hit, doesn't land. And then he's about to die when Cap lifts Mjolnir. And when I tell you the sound in the theater, the eruption, the claps, the cheers, when Captain America lifts Mjolnir and attacks Thanos, it was like no other. That's pure cinema. That is cinema. That was amazing. That is the reason why you do movie theaters, is that cheer, that eruption, that scream, that everybody being like, woo! That huge moment where everybody's just like, yes! It's perfect. So we see a now Mjolnired up Captain America with his vibranium shield and Mjolnir fighting together. He unleashes the lightning. He attacks. Oh, it's magnificent. I wanted it to go longer. But then Thanos comes back and he destroys his shield and beats up Cap. And now it's Cap just laying down and he has to stand back up. He has to get ready to stand back up and face the threat, even if he has to do it alone. And it's just a cool scene to see him stand up and try to face a whole army all on his own. But he's not alone. He just has to look on his left and he sees Black Panther reappear. Everybody who got snapped away brought back through the portal scene, and that whole moment is just so awesome, seeing everybody come back. The theater cheering, everybody's return. The buildup of the music, Ant-Man turning into Giant Man and taking Hulk and War Machine and Rocket out, and now everybody's back and grouped together. And then the theme song starts blaring, and it's a war now. It's Thanos' army versus the Avengers army, and we get an Avengers Assemble from Cap, and then we start charging into the battle, baby. And it's just epic. It's just huge. It's all of the superheroes fighting and all the characters we know. It's Black Panther and Baku. It's Ant-Man as Giant Man. It's Iron Man with Pepper Potts in her Iron Man suit, and they're fighting side by side together. It's Cap and Thor, switching hammers. Cap accidentally getting Stormbreaker and Thor getting Mjolnir, and then Thor going no, you hold the little one, and they switch back and they fight. And then it's all of that. It's reunions. It's Spider-Man and Tony Stark hugging and reuniting with one another. It's Doctor Strange and Tony Stark kind of being like, if I tell you what happens, it won't happen. It's Sam and Cap reuniting, and it's Thor and his Asgardian soldiers coming back, and all of it, just all of it coming back to normal, you know what I mean? And so we see this fight go on, and now Clint is kind of in a position where he's like, guys, what do you want me to do with this gauntlet here, huh? And so they're kind of like, we got to send it back, don't we? And Tony has to remind everyone, well, there's no chance in that. The time machine's broken when they came back. But then Scott says, that wasn't our only time machine. And he shows the van, and that's their way out of this, you know? And so during the fight, we see multiple battles take place. And in terms of reunions, we see Peter and Gamora reunite, except it's not the Gamora that Peter knows. It's the past version before they ever met. And so they kind of make the reunion not as beautiful for Quill. He doesn't get Gamora back, but he gets Gamora back kind of. So anyways, it's up to Ant-Man and the Wasp to get the quantum van back up and running, and everybody else fighting and working together. We get to see Spider-Man use instant kill, which was fun. We got to see Cap call Spider-Man Queens, which is a nod to Civil War. We got to see Valkyrie and Spider-Man and everybody come together, basically. It's just an awesome fight. If I go over the whole thing, it'll be too long. But anyways, Captain Marvel appears and she destroys Thanos' ship. And now they have the leg up. They're winning. And so all Captain Marvel has to do is get the Infinity Gauntlet through the van and travel back to the past, deliver all the stones, and Thanos has no more leverage. But Thanos stops her. He destroys the van, and he gets the Infinity Gauntlet, but Captain Marvel stops him at the last second. And in a brilliant strike of genius, he grabs the Power Stone out of the Infinity Gauntlet and punches Captain Marvel in the face, dude. Brilliant. He gets the stones all together, and Tony and Thor and Captain America try to stop Thanos again, with Thor trying to cut his head off with Stormbreaker and braced by Mjolnir. And then Cap tries to help him. And then Tony realizes that he looks at Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange looks at him, and he kind of tells him that there's only one way. So Tony goes directly for the stones, and he grabs the Infinity Gauntlet that he made, and Thanos tries to snap his fingers, realizing that he's inevitable, but he's not. He says, I am inevitable, snaps his fingers, and nothing happens. He doesn't feel the Infinity Stones anymore. And we take a look over to Tony, and he has the Infinity Stones. He transferred them from the nano gauntlet over to his nano suit, and he snaps his fingers, saying, I am Iron Man. And he destroys Thanos' army, destroys Thanos, but at the sacrifice, at the cost of his life, Tony Stark dies after using the Infinity Stones. And we see Rhodey come up to him, the first one to find him, just like in the first Iron Man movie when he got kidnapped. Then Peter gets a moment. Then Pepper gets a moment. And he dies. It's so sad. And to me, it needed to be this way. If it was anybody else who snapped their fingers, I don't feel like it would be as earned after all of this time. You know, just for me, I feel like since 2008 to 2019, if there was ever a death that was warranted or feels impactful, it's Iron Man's. And keeping him around, I don't know. I don't know what they would do with Tony Stark after this. You know what I mean? I don't know how he would fit into the Marvel Universe anymore. You know, keep bringing him back as an Avenger? No. He did his part. He brought the world back. He invented time travel. He got to protect his family and his wife. He got to have his daughter and his wife, you know? I feel like this snap is, it's for him, you know, so he can finally have some peace, knowing that he took out the biggest threat in the universe, Thanos, the thing that he's been thinking about, dreading about all this time. And so we see some tears being shed. We see a funeral. All the Marvel characters that came to be because of his movie, because he started it all. We see Nick Fury come back, who told him about the Avengers Initiative. Crazy. And then we see the aftermath. After a war like that, there's bound to be some damages. Some new things are going to change. We see Thor make Valkyrie the king of Asgard, as he's going to travel the space with the Asgardians of the galaxy. You know what I mean? That's such a funny moment when they all come together. We see everybody get ready for what comes next, for the future of their lives. We see Clint and Wanda have a moment together where he's able to appreciate her being alive again, their relationship, their bond, but still feeling like he's missing Natasha, how she should be there, you know? How after everything that he's been through, after everything him and Wanda have been through, if there was a way to tell Vision, to tell Natasha that they're back, you know, that they did it, you know what I mean? How to tell them everything's going to be okay. But Wanda assures them that they know. They know. So then we cut to Captain America getting ready to return all of the Infinity Stones where they got them before, you know, being able to help people out. He tells Bucky don't do anything stupid until he gets back, and Bucky tells him, how can I? You're taking all the stupid with you. Call back to the first Avenger movie, to Captain America, the first Avenger, the first Captain America movie. And then he goes back in time, returns the Infinity Stones, and then he comes back an old man. He comes back after living a life with Peggy Carter, the love of his life, baby. And then we cut to him passing on the shield to Sam Wilson, being the new Captain America. And we get to see Steve and Peggy finally get their dance as they slow dance together in the living room, as they embrace each other and then they kiss each other, ending the movie. And that's just so beautiful. Such a nice, satisfying way to end the movie. Romantic and full of love, you know. And then we get the title card sequences where the actors sign their names. The theater was clapping, rejoicing at that one. Everybody was clapping their hands, cheering, screaming when Jeremy Renner came up there, then Scarlett Johansson, then Chris Hemsworth, and then Mark Ruffalo, and then Captain America Steve Rogers, and then finally Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. That was huge. And it all came together, and it was perfect. This movie is a buildup of the MCU. I love this movie. I really like what the Russo brothers have done with it. I think it was smart of them not to title it Avengers Infinity War Part 2, because initially it was Avengers Infinity War Part 1 and then Avengers Infinity War Part 2. But I like that they changed the titles. It's Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, because they're two totally different movies. I like the themes about time, about family and friends, and how everybody can reunite. Just make use of the time that you got, you know? I like it all. I like how it all comes together. And so this is peak Marvel. Again, they just hit it. They just landed. Satisfying ending. I feel like everybody, well, mostly everybody, minus, again, it could flip-flop. Natasha or Clint, you know what I mean? It could have been either or. But I guess my mind is mostly floating about the possibility of Clint dying more, just because I feel like they're not fully utilizing his character the best way that they could, you know? So, I don't know. I feel like maybe Black Widow would be a little bit more marketable movie-wise, but that's just me. Anyways, Avengers Endgame, when you're watching Avengers Endgame, just take notice of all the time it took you to get to this point. All of the movies, all of the hours you spent watching, developing the story, and how satisfying it is at the end of it all for it to have a deep personal connection and meaning to you, your friends, your family, whoever you watch these with or connect with. And it makes you cherish those moments that you go to the theaters and you get to be surrounded by other people who are just as affected by it as you are, I still remember that moment, and we're still chasing that feeling. We all want to chase that feeling again. So this is where the Infinity Saga ends. And then, well, no, actually, the next movie is where the Infinity Saga ends, I guess. That would be Spider-Man Far From Home. But we'll talk about that next time. So anyways, this is where we end it. Avengers Endgame. Great movie. So rewatchable. Great moments. So, anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys on next time. Thank you. Now, listen, guys. I know I just ended the pod, but listen, I kind of forgot where Tony and Steve go back in time to the 1970s. I also missed Stan Lee's final cameo. Gosh, R.I.P. to the man. Stan Lee's final cameo. Make love, man, not war. He drives off. Oh, my goodness. R.I.P. to the homie. All of those movies he was appearing in and being a cameo in, that's great stuff. But anyways, we see Steve and Tony go back in time to the 1970s to get the Tesseract after their failure during 2012. So they go back even further to where Hank Pym would have Pym particles for them to go back in time again to their original timeline and stuff like that. So we see Steve get a final look at Peggy. She's still looking good in the 70s. All right. And then we also get to see Tony bond with his father about being parents, about finally realizing that, you know what? My life or my parents or my father and I didn't have like the best relationship, but looking back at all the time that we spent together now, I just look at all the good stuff, all of the great things that I remember about him, and they have that connection, And I feel like it's a great moment for Tony to get that kind of closure on his daddy issues, And Steve kind of gets a glimpse at what his life could be, And so that's it. I kind of missed over those points, especially because it just goes to show what time means to both of them, or get that final piece of closure for the both of them, or a realization of like, this is what my life or our lives could be like, Tony finally gets to make peace with his father, or kind of gets to tell himself like, you know what? There are a lot of things I could have said to his dad, a lot of things he could have told him, but in the end, he just wanted to embrace him and tell him how much he cares about him and give him a big thank you. And that was it. And then Steve seeing Peggy again in the flesh, right between that window and him, just seeing that sexy, hot, beautiful Peggy, even in this, ooh boy, he was just like, I need to go back further. I need to go back and give her that last dance. You know what I mean? I promised her. So I think, I just think that's really funny, and it's a good moment for the both of them. So kind of an important thing that Tony screwed up so that both of them can see what they could, have or get out of this, So in the end, it all worked out. And this movie is still great. This movie is still amazing. And one of the highlights of the movie is when they can take in those emotional moments for two amazing characters who have been such a huge part of this Marvel journey. So in the end, when you're watching Avengers Endgame, for real, this is the ending. When you're watching Avengers Endgame, take in the time and just remember all of the story that was built up, all of the things that it took for all of these characters to get here, and think about how you watching all of it brought you here, So, yeah, Anyways, guys, for the final time, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.